I chose the Harrow Court because it was cheap, close to the convention center, and had decent reviews that didn't read like ads. I was in the city for 3 days to present a dull software demo and smile through sponsored lunches. I told myself I didn't need comfort. I needed a bed, a shower, and a door that locked. The lobby looked like it was trying to remember a better decade. Low lights, fake marble, a chandelier that had lost its confidence. The carpet was thick enough to swallow coins. I noticed the smell first. Lemon cleaner laid over something older and sweeter, like damp wood. A tall arrangement of lilies sat on the counter, their petals too white for the room. The night clerk was a man in his late 50s with a bald head and the posture of someone who had learned to lower his expectations without telling himself he had. His name tag said, Martin. He smiled in a polite, tired way. "Checking in?" he asked. I handed him my card and ID. He typed for a long moment and then frowned at the screen, not at me. "We're a little full tonight," he said. "There's a medical conference in town." "That's fine," I said. He looked up. "You'll be on the 6th, near the end of the hall." I could have asked for something closer to the elevators, but I didn't. I didn't want to be the kind of person who made demands at midnight. He slid a key card toward me and said, almost as an afterthought, "If you need anything, call down. We're short-staffed, but we'll do our best." There was a pause where I felt like he wanted to add something. He didn't. The elevator was slow and made a soft rattling noise, like a distant box of nails. The 6th-floor hallway was narrow and strangely quiet, the way a place gets when the air is old and nobody wants to talk to it. The paint on the walls was newly touched up, but the color was wrong in spots, the patched areas slightly brighter, like new skin. My room was 614. Inside it was better than the hallway. Basic, clean, a queen bed with crisp sheets, a desk with a lamp that gave off the kind of light that makes you look exhausted. The window faced a parking structure. I set my suitcase down and did the quick automatic safety check I always do in unfamiliar rooms. I looked in the closet, behind the bathroom curtain, and under the bed. I'm not dramatic. I'm just careful. Nothing. I took a shower that was too hot and watched the water turn the mirror into fog. The city noise outside was muted up here, as if the building was wrapped in thick cloth. I planned to sleep when my phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Jenna. "We're doing drinks in the lobby bar if you're awake." I almost ignored it. Then I remembered that isolation makes cities feel hostile. The lobby bar was small, with a few round tables and a television mounted too high. Jenna and 2 other colleagues were already there. They waved me over. We had 1 drink, then a second. The talk drifted from work to travel, to the usual mutual jokes about how we were all tired of pretending our jobs were exciting. There were other guests scattered around. A couple in matching windbreakers, a woman with a rolling case and a folder thick with papers, 2 men in suits who were talking in low voices with the intensity of people negotiating something that mattered more to them than it should have. I noticed a man sitting alone at the far end of the bar, mid-30s maybe, dark hair, clean shirt, nothing memorable about him except how still he was. He stared at his phone without scrolling. He didn't drink. "You okay?" Jenna asked me. "Yeah, just people watching. That's your hobby in every city." I smiled and took another sip. When we broke up, Jenna said, "Don't oversleep. The demo's at 9. "Wouldn't dream of it." I went back to the elevator with the mild buzz of alcohol softening the edges of the day. As the doors closed, the still man from the bar stepped in at the last second. "Sorry," he said without looking at me. "It's fine." He pressed the button for the 6th floor. I waited for the small talk that sometimes happens in elevators. It didn't. He kept his hands at his sides. He didn't smell like cologne or cigarettes. He smelled like soap. The doors opened. We walked in opposite directions. Then I heard him slow, as if thinking. He said, "This place used to be a hospital wing. Did you know that?" I stopped. "What?" He had already started walking again. "Never mind. Just a rumor." He disappeared down the hall. I stood there for a second, annoyed at how easily people can seed a thought in your head and leave you with it. I told myself it was nonsense. Back in my room, I set my phone on the nightstand and tried to fall asleep. My first interruption was a muffled sound from the hallway. A rolling cart, maybe. Pressed voices. The second was a short, sharp sound that I convinced myself was a door closing hard. I didn't get up. The last interruption came as a smell. It wasn't strong. Just a faint medicinal note drifting in through the crack under my door. Something like bleach mixed with copper. It made me sit up and turn on the bedside lamp. I waited for it to pass. It didn't. I opened the door an inch. The hallway was empty. The lights hummed. Halfway down the hall, a housekeeping cart sat parked beside a door. That was odd for this late. A plastic bucket on the cart looked recently used, a thin sheen of water clinging to its inside. I was about to close my door when another door opened across from me. A woman stepped out, pulling her coat on. She looked like she was in her 40s, tired but composed. "Is something going on?" she asked quietly. "I'm not sure. I thought I smelled cleaning chemicals." She nodded toward the cart. "They've been renovating off and on. Maybe a flood." "Yeah, probably." We both stood there too long, two strangers uniting briefly around a tiny mystery. Then she gave a small, polite smile. "I'm Marissa," she said. I told her my name. "Have a good night," she said. "You too." She walked toward the elevator. I watched her go until the doors swallowed her. I went back inside and locked my door. In the morning, I woke up earlier than my alarm. The air in the room felt dry. I drank a cup of terrible coffee from the machine, then headed down for the conference shuttle. At the lobby, there was a thin wall of quiet tension. 2 police officers stood near the front desk. A manager in a gray suit spoke to them with a face that tried to be professional, but kept slipping into panic. The night clerk Martin sat on a chair against the wall, his hands clasped in front of him like he was praying to a thing that had already left. Jenna noticed my expression. "What's going on?" I shook my head. We slowed as we neared the group. One of the officers caught sight of us and lifted a hand. "Guests, please give us a little space." "Did something happen?" Jenna asked. "There was an incident overnight." "An incident?" "Please head to the other side of the lobby." We stood near the bar, careful not to stare. But everyone was staring. I saw a woman in a hotel robe crying quietly into her phone. A man with a suitcase asked for a refund and got no answer. The manager kept rubbing his forehead as if the skin would eventually grant him a solution. I went to Martin when the officer stepped away for a second. "Hey," I said softly. "Are you okay?" He looked at me like he was surprised someone recognized him as a human. "I'm fine," he said, which was the exact tone of someone who wasn't. "Was someone hurt?" His eyes flicked to the cops. He lowered his voice. "A guest was found in one of the rooms, 6th floor." My stomach tightened. "Alive?" He didn't answer. The officer returned and Martin shut down again, face blank. The shuttle arrived. We debated staying. Work won the argument. The demo went smoothly in the way boring things can go smoothly. People nodded at the right parts and asked safe questions. I clapped politely during other presentations. I told myself the hotel situation was likely an overdose or a medical emergency. But I kept seeing Martin's face. When we got back in the late afternoon, the lobby was still unsettled. There were fewer people lounging. The bar was closed. 2 new staff members hovered near the desk, moving too quickly, eyes scanning the room. I approached the front desk. The manager was gone. A younger clerk checked me in and smiled too wide. "Everything okay upstairs?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yes, sir. We're cooperating with authorities. We apologize for any inconvenience." It was the kind of answer that means stop asking. I went to the elevator and rode up with 2 women who spoke in whispers. "They said it was violent," one said. "I'm switching hotels," the other answered. I tried not to listen, then failed. Back on the 6th floor, the hall looked like it had the same shape, but a different temperature. A door 3 rooms down had yellow tape across it. A uniformed security guard stood nearby with a clipboard. I slowed my pace. "Sir," he said, "is that my side of the hall?" "Yes. Your room is clear. Just don't go past the tape." I nodded and went inside. I texted Jenna. "There's police tape on our floor." She replied almost instantly. "I'm changing hotels. You should too." I considered it, but my presentation was in the morning. I was tired. I told myself that one bad incident didn't automatically mean danger to everyone. I ordered room service because the thought of eating out with the energy of the street felt impossible. The food arrived slow and lukewarm. After I ate, I tried to work. I couldn't. I kept thinking about the cart I'd seen the night before, parked beside a door. I remembered the faint copper smell. I tried to picture which room it had been outside. I realized with a cold clarity that it had been outside the taped room. I stood up and paced. I told myself not to turn a coincidence into a story. But the feeling wouldn't let go. I took my phone and headed downstairs. Martin was at the desk again, looking like he'd aged a year and a day. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He looked cautious. "I was on 6 last night. I saw a housekeeping cart near one of the rooms. Was that part of..." I stopped, not wanting to say the word. He exhaled slowly. "They're saying it was a guest-on-guest situation. Like a fight? They won't tell me details." "Was the victim a woman?" His face tightened. "I shouldn't say anything." I lowered my voice. A woman introduced herself to me in the hall. Her name was Marissa. She left late. If she was involved, I need to tell the police. His eyes widened slightly. "She was a guest?" "Yes." "Room?" "I don't know her room." Martin looked past me, thinking. "I can't confirm anything. But if you met someone, write down everything you remember. They might ask you. I nodded. I went back upstairs feeling sick. I wrote a note on my phone with the few details I had. Her name, her face, her coat, the direction she'd gone. It felt absurdly flimsy. I tried to sleep early. The building did not settle. People came and went in the hallway. The elevator chimed more than usual. At some point, I heard someone arguing 2 doors down and then crying. Close to midnight, I heard a knock. Not the cliché, delicate tapping. A single firm knock like someone who had authority. I didn't move. The knock came again. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in a security uniform stood outside. He held a small clipboard. I cracked the door with the chain on. "Sorry to bother you, sir," he said. "We're doing a quick safety check. There was an incident and we want to make sure all guests on this side of the hall are aware of emergency exits." It sounded plausible in a corporate late-night panic sort of way. "I'm all right," I said. He smiled politely. "It won't take long. May I come in to confirm you received the notice?" I didn't receive anything. His smile didn't change. "It's just a signature." I glanced down the hall. No other rooms had doors open. No one else was being checked. Something in my chest tightened. "I can sign out here." His eyes flicked to the chain. "That's not protocol." "What's your name?" I asked. He paused. "Elliot." "Martin downstairs mentioned a guard named—" I lied, then stopped. The man's face hardened by a fraction. "Sir, this is for your safety." I started to close the door. His hand shot forward and caught the edge. The chain stopped it from opening more, but the force made the door shudder. "Hey," I said sharply. His voice lowered. "Open the door." I slammed it shut and locked the deadbolt. I stepped back, heart punching my ribs. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then I heard the soft scrape of something against the lock, quick and practiced. I heard the chain rattle and strain. The door shook once, twice, then stopped. I stayed still so long my legs started to ache. The hallway remained silent. I grabbed my phone. My hands were unsteady. I called the front desk. A different clerk answered. "There's someone pretending to be security on 6, I said. He tried to force his way into my room. There was a long pause. "Sir, security doesn't do checks that late." "I know." "Stay in your room. I'm calling police." I stood with my ear pressed to the door. I heard distant footsteps. Then a muffled voice further down the hall. Then nothing. 10 minutes later, real security arrived with 2 police officers. I opened the door only after I recognized the hotel uniform and saw the officers. I described the man as best I could. "Did you get a clear look at his face?" one of the officers asked. "Yes." "What about a badge?" "No." "Clothes?" "Uniform was dark, like yours." I nodded at the hotel guard beside them. The hotel guard looked uncomfortable. The officers exchanged a glance. "We've had other reports tonight," the officer said. My stomach sank. "Other reports of a fake guard? Of someone trying to access rooms? Did he hurt anyone?" He didn't answer directly. We're checking every floor. If you remember anything else, let us know. They left. I locked the door again. I sat on the bed with the lights on. I didn't feel brave. I felt like someone had pushed me onto a narrow bridge and told me not to move. An hour passed. I tried to call Jenna, but she didn't answer. I texted, "You okay?" I had someone try to force entry. No response. I told myself she was asleep, or in a different hotel where she didn't need to think about me. Around 1 a.m, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Are you still awake?" I stared at it. I didn't reply. A second message arrived. "I'm sorry about earlier. I'm real staff. I have to check your floor." I blocked the number. The room felt smaller than it had in daylight. I picked up a chair and wedged it under the door handle, something I'd only ever seen people do in movies. It felt childish and necessary at the same time. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop, pretending work was a shield. At some point, I dozed in the chair with my arms folded. A sound pulled me back to the surface. It wasn't loud. It was a kind of irregular dragging noise in the hallway. I looked at the time on my screen, and then looked away because I didn't want to anchor terror to a number. I stood and went to the peephole. The corridor was lit in that dim amber that turns faces into masks. A housekeeping cart rolled slowly past my door. No one was pushing it. It moved as if guided by a weak current. I waited for the shadow of a person to appear behind it. Nothing. The cart stopped a few doors down. A door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a hotel housekeeping uniform, gloves on his hands. He took the cart handle and guided it into the room. Before the door closed, I glimpsed something inside, the edge of a plastic sheet on the floor, the kind used in renovation. Maybe they were cleaning a spill. The door shut. I wasn't proud of what I did next. I listened. I put my ear against my door and tried to interpret the building's language. Muffled movement, the scrape of metal, then a sound like the top of a bottle being twisted, then a short scream. It stopped so abruptly my brain refused to accept it. The hallway remained quiet. I backed away from the door. I called police again. "This is room 614, I said. I heard a scream from a room down the hall. Someone in housekeeping just went in with a cart. The dispatcher asked me to stay on the line. I heard footsteps outside that weren't mine. The dispatcher said officers were on the way. I stayed near the door, breathing shallowly. By the time the police arrived, the hallway looked normal again. Too normal. They knocked on the room I'd indicated. No answer. They tried the key. The door opened. I couldn't see inside from where I stood, but I saw one officer step back fast, hand rising to his face. They asked me to return to my room. I didn't obey. I stayed in the doorway just enough to see a corner of the room. There was a plastic sheet stretched across most of the carpet. The housekeeping cart was just inside the door. On the plastic were two bodies. One was a man in a suit, face turned away, his hands bound with something white that looked like torn bedsheets. The other was a woman in a blouse and slacks, her hair matted dark. I won't describe the rest in tidy detail. I can't without shaking. They were dead in a way that wasn't accidental, not quick, not merciful. The kind of violence that requires time and intention. There were cuts that looked clean and controlled, placed with a purpose I couldn't understand. The plastic sheet wasn't for cleanliness. It was for efficiency. An officer closed the door and asked me again to go to my room. This time I did. I locked the door and sat on the floor with my back against it. I thought of the lilies in the lobby. I thought of the lemon cleaner. I thought of the still man at the bar who smelled like soap. I tried to assemble these pieces into something rational, and my mind kept sliding off them. Sometime later, there was another knock at my door. I froze. "Police," a voice said. I moved to the peephole. 2 officers stood outside. I opened the door with the chain still on. "We need to ask you some questions," one said. They didn't enter this time. They spoke in the hall. "Did you speak with anyone on this floor last night besides hotel staff?" "A woman named Marissa. Briefly." "Do you know her last name?" "No." "Did you see anyone else?" "There was a man in the bar. Dark hair. Quiet. He mentioned a rumor about this place being a hospital wing." The officer wrote something down. "What did he look like?" I described him. The officer's expression tightened. "Do you recognize this name?" he asked. He showed me a photo on his phone of an ID card. The name blurred in my vision. I forced myself to read it. Elliot Hayes. The same name the fake guard had given. My mouth went dry. He said his name was Elliot. The officers traded another look. "That name belongs to a real security employee," the officer said. "He was found dead earlier tonight in a storage room." I stared at him. "Someone took his uniform." "That's what we believe." "What about the bodies in that room?" "We can't discuss details." "Is Marissa okay?" I asked. They didn't answer. I felt the answer anyway. The officers asked more questions about what I'd heard, what I'd smelled, what I'd seen. I answered until my voice started to crack. When they left, I was left with the kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace, just absence. I called Jenna again. This time she answered in a whisper. "I checked out," she said. "I'm at the airport. Are you okay?" "I'm alive," I said. "That's not the same thing." "No." I told her about the fake guard and the bodies. She made a sound like she was trying not to vomit. "Get out," she said. "I will. I just need to pack. Now." I hung up and started throwing things into my suitcase. When I opened my door, the hallway was chaotic. 2 more officers, a hotel manager arguing with someone on the phone, a stretcher moving past fast. I kept my eyes on the carpet and walked toward the elevator. The door beside the taped room opened. A woman stepped out. Marissa. She looked pale and unsteady, as if her blood had been replaced with cold water. I stopped. "Marissa?" Her eyes focused on me slowly. "Oh," she said. You're okay?" She opened her mouth as if to answer and then seemed to change her mind. "I shouldn't be out here," she said. "They told me to stay in the room." "Were you?" "Yes," she said flatly. "I was supposed to check out early." I didn't. What happened? Her gaze flicked over my shoulder toward the officers. I heard someone in the hall. I opened my door because I thought it was housekeeping. He was holding a cart and he said he spilled something. He asked for towels. I felt a cold wave move up my spine. He was polite, she said. I know that's the worst part. He was polite while he pushed his way inside. Did you see his face? Barely. He had his head down, like he was shy. She swayed. I reached out instinctively to steady her, but stopped short of touching her, unsure of what permission looks like in shock. He didn't kill me, she said quietly. Not because he couldn't. Why not? Her lips trembled with something like shame. Because someone else knocked on my door. A real guard. It startled him. He went out into the hall for less than a minute, and I ran into the bathroom and locked myself in. I thought of the scream I'd heard, the way it ended. I thought of how quickly someone could move from one room to another if they knew the layout. Did you hear anything after that? I asked. Yes. What? She swallowed, dragging. Her eyes brimmed, but she seemed angry at herself for it. I didn't open the door again. I didn't even breathe. One of the officers spotted us and approached. Ma'am, please return to your room. Marissa nodded. She looked at me once more. If you can leave, leave, she said. She went back inside. I continued toward the elevator with my suitcase. When the doors opened, the still man from the bar was inside. My body went rigid. He wore a different shirt now, but his face was unmistakable. He smiled like we were acquaintances. Looks like we're both escaping, he said. I stepped back. The doors started to close. I jammed my hand between them. He didn't move. Are you headed to the lobby? He asked. I stared at him and felt my mind try to rationalize what my instincts were screaming. He was just a guest, a coincidence, a man with a forgettable face. But the name in the officer's phone carded itself through my head. Elliot. He could have any name. What room are you in? I asked. He tilted his head. Why? Because you said something weird last night about this place used to be a hospital wing. A soft laugh. People say all kinds of things about old hotels. The elevator doors were still forced open by my hand. He took one slow step toward me. Are you scared of me? He asked. My mouth went dry. I let the doors close. I waited for another elevator. When I looked down the hall, he was gone. I took the stairs. Each landing smelled faintly of disinfectant. By the time I reached the lobby, the police had expanded their presence. More officers, more murmured conversations. The hotel's front doors were crowded with people trying to leave. I pushed through and stepped outside into cold air that felt like oxygen for the first time in hours. I walked fast, then faster, until the Harrow Court was behind me. I didn't go back for my receipt. I didn't argue about refunds. I didn't even remember to be angry. 2 blocks away, I looked back. The hotel had that same unremarkable face it had when I arrived. The sort of building thousands of people pass without seeing. A place that could swallow a night and never have to explain what it did with it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A text arrived a second later. You were careful. Most people aren't. I felt my knees soften. I kept walking. I didn't know yet that the story wasn't just about a killer in a hotel. It was about how easily someone can learn the rhythm of strangers, how quickly a building can turn into a weapon, and how the worst kind of predator doesn't look like a monster. He looks like a man waiting for an elevator. I told myself the text was a sick prank, a bored cop, a friend of a friend who'd heard I was on the 6th floor and thought it would be funny to push me over the edge. I didn't believe that for long. I walked until my legs burned. I ducked into a bright coffee chain and stood in line behind people who looked like they belonged to a different world. I ordered whatever was on the board and sat with my back to the wall, the way people don't think to sit unless they've started expecting trouble. My phone stayed face down on the table. When it buzzed again, I waited until I was sure my hands wouldn't shake too much to answer. Unknown number. You left your charger. I stared at that message like it was written in a language I'd just learned. I did leave my charger. I must have. The bag was light, the pockets wrong. I pulled it out and checked. Empty. My mind did a quick, desperate inventory of who could know that. Only someone who had been in my room. I slammed the phone into airplane mode and stood so fast, my chair scraped the floor and earned me a few annoyed looks. I walked out without taking my coffee. The city felt sharper now. The noise had edges. I didn't want to go to the airport right away. Airports are good for disappearing into crowds, but you need to be calm to use that advantage. I wasn't calm. I was sweating through my shirt in cold air. I kept moving through streets with names I didn't remember and buildings I'd never see again, trying to build distance with motion. I checked into a different hotel under a different chain across town, the kind with a lobby so bland it could be used as a witness protection program. I paid extra for a room closer to the elevators and asked for no housekeeping. The new room was clean and anonymous. I looked under the bed anyway. I didn't sleep. I watched local news with the sound low. The Harrow Court story ran in short segments. The anchors said, "Incident. Ongoing investigation." Authorities declined to comment. They didn't say serial. They didn't say killer. They didn't say how many. I called the police station number I found online and asked to speak to someone in charge of the investigation. After being transferred twice, a detective finally came on the line. He introduced himself as Detective Carver. I told him my name, my room number, the fake guard, the scream, the 2 bodies. He listened without interrupting. When I mentioned the text about my charger, he went very quiet. "Did you tell anyone you left a charger?" he asked. "No." "Did you post about it?" "No." "Okay." That one word was heavy. "Is this bigger than one night?" I asked. He didn't answer the question. He answered around it. "We're asking guests to remain available for statements. Don't leave the city yet. I'm not safe in this city. You could be unsafe in any city if you do the wrong thing right now. That's not reassuring." "It's not meant to be," he said. "It's meant to keep you alive." He asked where I was staying. I hesitated, then gave him the new hotel's name. "Good," he said. "Don't go back to the Harrow Court. If you get any more messages, don't respond. Screenshot them and send them to this number." He gave me a work phone. Before he hung up, he added, "And don't assume you're the only person he's contacting." I thanked him and set my phone down. I needed to tell work something. I called my boss and said there had been a violent crime at my hotel, and I was cooperating with police. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. His tone changed instantly into the careful concern of someone who is afraid of human tragedy and legal liability in equal measure. "Take care of yourself," he said. "We'll handle the rest." That was generous, or maybe convenient. I called Jenna next. She picked up on the first ring. "You sound like you're breathing through a straw," she said. "I might be." I told her about the text. She swore softly. "Have you eaten?" she asked. "I don't think so." "Call room service, lock the door. Text me your new address. I'm not there, but if something happens and I need to tell someone where you are, I want it in writing." I did as she said. Then I shoved a chair under the handle again because my brain had decided that was now a reasonable thing to do. Late that afternoon, Detective Carver came to the new hotel with another officer. He was tall and wiry, with the kind of expression that suggests he has seen enough bodies to stop reacting to them, and enough living people to start worrying about the ones who survive. We sat in the lobby in a corner away from the check-in line. He asked me to walk through my timeline again, starting from check-in. I told him about Martin, the bar, the still man, the comment about the hospital wing, the cart, Marissa, the fake guard, the messages. When I finished, Carver took out a folder with printed photos. I expected images of suspects. Instead, it was architectural. Floor plans. The Harrow Court was built on top of an older structure, he said. "A hospital?" "Not exactly. A private clinic. Long shut down. The hotel expanded and sealed a lot of interior access points. But old buildings keep their shortcuts." He tapped the map. "There are service corridors that don't show on guest maps, maintenance keys, old utility doors. We've been working with the fire marshal to track what's still accessible." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you were on the floor where he moved the most. And because you didn't die." That landed hard. "What do you think he wants?" I asked. Carver hesitated slightly. "You might not like this answer. Try me. He wants to be seen by someone who can tell the story the right way." I gave him a look that felt like disbelief, but was probably just horror. "You're saying he contacted me because I was a good witness. I'm saying some offenders aren't satisfied with the act. They want the echo. They want control over the narrative." I wanted to argue with him. Call it melodramatic profiling. But the text, "You were careful. Most people aren't," didn't sound like someone trying to rob me. It sounded like someone grading my behavior. Carver asked if I would agree to a temporary protective detail if the department could spare it. I asked what that meant. A uniformed officer in the lobby. A patrol check on your floor. We can't put someone outside your door 24 hours a day. "I'm not a celebrity." He gave a small smile. "Neither are most victims." I agreed. He asked me another question that surprised me. "Do you remember anything about the lilies in the lobby?" "Yeah. Why?" "Those bouquets are delivered weekly. The florist told us someone called this week and changed the order, added lilies and asked for a specific arrangement style. So, the account was paid in cash. The name on the order was fake, but the caller gave the clerk a line that matched a line in a letter we received. A letter? He didn't show it to me. Not for your eyes right now. My skin prickled. You've gotten letters from him. We've gotten communications. How many? Enough to be careful with what we say on television. That night I ate a few bites of room service and pushed the plate away. I kept the TV on for noise. At some point I checked my phone and saw a missed call from Martin. I hesitated. Then I called him back. He answered like he'd been holding the phone. "Thank you for calling," he said. "Are you okay?" "No," he said. "I'm not." The honesty made my throat tighten. "I shouldn't be calling you," he added. "But they put me on leave and they told me not to talk to anyone. And I'm sitting in my apartment staring at my hands like I'm trying to figure out if I'm guilty of something I don't remember doing." "You're not guilty. You don't know that. I know you didn't want any of this." He breathed out a laugh that wasn't one. "They asked me about the master keys, the service elevators, the old clinic corridors. I didn't even know half of it existed. Did you ever see that man? The one in the bar? I've seen 1,000 men in that bar. Quiet, dark hair, didn't drink." "Maybe," Martin said. "Maybe not." Then, in a quieter voice, "I did find something weird last month." "What?" "I was doing the overnight walk through. In the old linen storage off the basement stairwell, there was a small cabinet that should have been locked. What was inside?" He paused. "Clean uniforms. Security, housekeeping, maintenance. Like someone was collecting them. I reported it to management and they told me not to make a big deal out of missing laundry." My stomach turned. "Did you tell the police that?" "I tried, but I don't have proof now. The cabinet was emptied after I mentioned it." "Martin, you need to tell Carver." "I will." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry you were there," he said. "Me too." After we hung up, I sent Carver a text about the cabinet. He replied with a simple, "Good intel. Thank you." I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The worst part wasn't the images my mind replayed. It was the idea that the killer had been practicing the mechanics of the building for weeks, maybe months, wearing real uniforms, knowing which doors didn't squeak, which cameras were dead angles, which staff members were too tired to argue. The Harrow Court hadn't just hosted violence. It had made it easier. The following morning, I had to go downtown to give a formal statement at the precinct. 2 officers escorted me from the new hotel to a car. I felt ridiculous, like a child walking to school with bodyguards in a world that had no reason to care. At the station, the statement took just over an hour. Carver listened more than he spoke. When we finished, I asked a question that had been growing teeth in my mind. Was Elliot Hayes really killed? Yes. Was he the first staff member? No. The room went very still. How many? I asked. Carver didn't give me a number. We have reason to believe the offender is selecting people who give him access, people who represent power inside the building. Security, housekeeping, maintenance. Yes. Why them? because uniforms are keys as much as the metal ones. I nodded slowly. The logic was awful and clean. Carver got a call and stepped out. I sat alone with my hands on my knees. I noticed something on the chair across the room. A small plastic bag, the kind used for evidence. Inside was a key card. The room number on the attached label read 614. My room. I stood. When Carver returned, I pointed at it. That's mine. He looked surprised. It was recovered in a sweep of the hotel. Recovered where? In a service stairwell locked cabinet. The air seemed to drop a few degrees. He took my key. It appears so. Which means he was in my room. Carver didn't contradict me. I heard my own breathing. I checked under the bed, I said. Doesn't mean much against someone who knows the venue, he replied. I asked another question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Do you think he was there that first night? In my room? Carver considered it. It's not impossible, he said. But don't make yourself carry that if we can't prove it. I'm carrying it anyway. He nodded like he understood. In the afternoon, I returned to the new hotel. Carver had arranged for me to pick up my charger and anything else I'd left behind if the Harrow court allowed a supervised retrieval. I told him I didn't want it. It's a cheap charger, I said. It's not about the charger, he replied. Sometimes we need you to walk into a room so you can see if anything else registers. I wanted to say no, but the idea of the killer having my belongings like trophies was another kind of violation. So I agreed. We went early evening. The Harrow court entrance was blocked with tape and 2 patrol cars. The lobby lights were on, but the place felt dead, like a stage after a play that ended badly. A different manager met us with shaking hands. No guests. No music. No smell of lilies. The flowers were gone. We rode a service elevator with a guard and a maintenance supervisor who looked ready to quit on the spot. The 6th floor was sealed off except for escorted access. My footsteps felt too loud. When we reached my door, Carver told me to stand behind him. He opened it with a master key. The room looked the same. That was the first shock. I had expected chaos. A broken window. A slashed mattress. Something that would announce itself as a crime scene. Instead, everything was neat. My suitcase was gone. I remembered I'd taken it. The trash was empty. The bed was made. The hotel cleaned it before we locked everything down, the supervisor said quickly, as if apologizing preemptively. Carver shot him a look that could have started fires. You cleaned an active room on an active floor during an active homicide investigation. The man wilted. We were told to restore business normalcy. Management. Carver turned away. I felt dizzy. It was a simple truth. The hotel had tried to erase evidence because evidence was bad for revenue. I walked to the desk. My notebook was still there, closed. I opened it. The notes I'd written the day before were gone. In their place was a single page torn from a different pad. One sentence written in neat block letters. You should have asked for a closer room. I felt my mouth go numb. Carver took the page with gloved hands and placed it in an evidence bag. Did you touch anything else? He asked. No. He nodded. Okay. That's good. I glanced toward the closet. The door was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. Maybe housekeeping did. Maybe no one did. I need a second, I said. Carver watched me carefully. I walked to the closet and opened it fully. My spare suit was gone. I'd left it hanging. At the bottom of the closet, a new object sat on the carpet. A folded hotel housekeeping apron, clean, pressed. The kind of thing you'd be given at the start of a shift. Carver removed it like it was radioactive. He was here after the cleaning, I said. Yes. In this room. Yes. The calm in Carver's voice scared me more than panic would have, because it meant we had crossed into a phase he recognized. Escalation. We left the hotel quickly. In the car, Carver told me something he probably shouldn't have. The 2 victims you saw in that room the second night, he said. They were part of the conference in town. They weren't supposed to be on your side of the hall. They had been moved. Moved how? Someone called them pretending to be hotel staff. Said they were upgrading them to a quieter area. The victims went willingly. I thought of the man who asked Marissa for towels. Polite, reasonable. I felt sick. He's using the hotel's own customer service language, I said. Yes. That night, I didn't go back to my new hotel. Carver arranged for me to stay in a safe house-like accommodation in a different part of town. Still a hotel, but one where the police had a stronger relationship and where the staff had been briefed directly. I won't pretend I felt safe. I just felt less exposed. The officers outside my door were real. I learned their names. I brought them coffee. I asked too many questions and then apologized. On the second day of this arrangement, Carver called me. We think we've got a direction, he said. What does that mean? We identified a former employee with access knowledge, security and maintenance, fired 2 years ago for harassment and theft. He lived in a building adjacent to the Harrow Court complex. Is he the man from the bar? We're checking CCTV footage to confirm. Why not just arrest him? We don't have enough to hold him yet. After everything? After everything, Carver said. One bad arrest and he walks. We need to be right. I sat down on the bed. Do you think he's still in the city? I think he likes the stage. That evening, a local news station ran a longer segment. They didn't name a suspect. They did mention that the police believed the offender had used employee uniforms and access routes. They asked the public to report any information about an unknown man seen in staff-only areas. They blurred faces. They used cautious language. But the message was clear enough that anyone who wanted attention would hear it. And he did. The next text came from another unknown number. They don't understand the building. You do. I didn't respond. I sent it to Carver. He replied, "We may use your phone as bait. Don't do anything without us." I typed, "I don't want to be bait." He wrote back, "I don't want you to be either. But the logic of a desperate hunt is cruel." The next day, Carver and 2 other detectives met me in a conference room inside the police headquarters. They asked if I would consent to a controlled communication strategy. I said no immediately. Then I listened. The offender had contacted 2 other surviving witnesses in the last 24 hours. Both were hotel guests who had reported suspicious interactions. One had received a threatening photo of a hallway. The other had received a message that included details of her room that no stranger should have known. "He's tightening his circle," Carver said. "Or he's bored," another detective said. "We think he wants a conversation," Carver added. "We want to control it." The plan was simple and awful. I would reply once, under supervision, with wording designed to keep him talking. They weren't asking me because I was brave. They were asking me because he had selected me as part of his performance. I asked for 10 minutes alone to decide. I stood by a window and watched traffic move like nothing in the world had changed. I thought about the 2 bodies on the plastic sheet. I thought about Elliot Hayes dying so someone else could wear his uniform. I thought about Marissa's face when she said the worst part was that he was polite. I returned to the conference room and said yes. Carver didn't look relieved. He looked burdened. We crafted a short message. "I don't understand the building. I was just lucky." "Why me?" Carver nodded. "We want him to explain himself," he said. "People like this think explanations are power." The reply came faster than I expected. "Because you looked. You didn't pretend nothing was wrong." We waited. Carver let a full minute pass before we sent another. "What do you want?" The response arrived with a location pin. A public place near the Harrow Court. Under the pin, 1 line. "Come back and I'll show you the part they won't tell you about." Carver took my phone. "We're not doing that." But his tone said we might. 2 hours later, we were in an unmarked vehicle half a block from the pin location. Carver had a radio in one hand and a coffee that had gone cold in the other. I was in the back seat with a plainclothes officer beside me. The location was a small outdoor plaza, bordered by a closed bookstore, a late-night grocery, and a narrow alley that led toward the hotel district. The city had hung winter lights overhead, cheerful, indifferent. Carver told me I would not get out of the car. "We're using your presence as a signal," he said. "If he's watching you, he'll move." That assumes he knows I'm here. He knows. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then a man in a maintenance jacket stepped into the plaza carrying a tool bag. Not unusual in a city, except his jacket was the exact shade of gray-green used by the Harrow Court's engineering staff. Carver stiffened. "Unit 3, eyes on maintenance jacket, Center Plaza," he said into the radio. The man walked to the edge of the fountain that had been turned off for winter. He set the tool bag down. He didn't look around like someone who had somewhere to be. He looked around like someone checking that all the players had taken their positions. Carver said, "That's him." "How do you know?" I asked. "We've got him on footage from a back corridor. Same gate. Same build." A second plainclothes unit moved in from the grocery side. A third approached from the alley. The man in the maintenance jacket noticed them. He smiled. He didn't run. He reached into the tool bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. He set it on the edge of the fountain and pressed play. We heard the sound through the car's cracked window. It was a woman's voice. A sobbing, pleading voice. It lasted less than 10 seconds before Carver swore and officers rushed forward. The man lifted both hands. No weapon, just the recorder. He let them cuff him. He kept smiling. Carver got out of the car so fast I didn't see him open the door. The officers pulled the man aside. A crowd started to gather at the edge of the plaza. Phones rose. "Stay here," the officer next to me said. I didn't. I got out anyway, feeling like my body was no longer taking instructions from the rational part of my brain. Carver saw me and started to tell me to get back in the car. Then he stopped. The man turned his head and looked directly at me. His face was the still man's face from the bar, the one I had tried to turn into a coincidence. He spoke quietly, but close enough for me to hear. "You didn't take the elevator," he said. My blood went cold. That was a good choice. Carver stepped between us. "That's enough," he said. The man didn't resist being pulled toward a waiting car. As they walked him away, he called over his shoulder, almost conversational, "Tell Martin I'm sorry about the trouble. He was always kind." Carver froze. That name was not public. 2 detectives moved faster. The suspect was placed into the rear seat of the unmarked vehicle, and the door slammed. All at once, the plaza felt like it exhaled. Carver grabbed my arm and steered me back toward our car. "Are you trying to give me an aneurysm?" he said. "Was that recording?" "We don't know what it is yet." "You said that was him." "I'm confident." "Confident isn't enough for a trial." He gave me a look. "Which is why we're going to search everything he's touched." Back at the station, while they processed him and got a warrant, an officer brought me water. I sat in a small room with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Carver returned after an hour. "This part is going to upset you," he said. It was already a bad sentence. The tool bag was a decoy. He wanted to be arrested in public. He wanted witnesses, cameras. So he set us up. He tried to control the scene, but he made one mistake. What mistake? He showed up. I wanted relief. I got something closer to numbness. Before midnight, Carver told me they had a name and a history. The suspect was a former Harrow Court employee. He had bounced between night security and maintenance, which meant he knew every locked door and every excuse that could open one. He had been fired for theft and harassment of a staff member. He had filed a bitter complaint afterward and accused the hotel of destroying his life. He had stalked at least one former coworker. "He sees the building as his," Carver said, "and he sees people inside it as part of his inventory." They executed a search warrant on his apartment. They found uniforms, keys, guest key cards stored in labeled envelopes, a stack of printed floor plans with handwritten notes. In a notebook, they found a list of dates and names. Some were crossed out. Some were circled. I asked if Marissa's name was there. Carver didn't answer right away. "Yes," he said finally. "But she's alive. She's under protection." A wave of relief hit me so hard I felt dizzy. Did he hurt her? He attacked her. She survived. That's what we'll say for now. There was something careful in his tone that told me the rest of the truth belonged to her, not me. I nodded. "How many victims?" I asked. Carver exhaled. "We have 6 confirmed connected to this event window. We're looking into older cases that might fit his pattern." 6. I stared at the wall. I thought of the lilies again. How white they had been. How normal they had looked. In the early hours of the morning, Carver walked me out to a secured ride back to my temporary hotel. "You did good," he said. I flinched at the word good. "I didn't do anything. You stayed alive long enough to give us something to work with," he said. "That counts." I went upstairs and finally slept. I dreamed about hallways that had no doors, just blank walls that looked the color of skin. When I woke, there was a message waiting from Jenna. "Any news?" I sent the safe version. "They arrested someone. I'm okay." She replied with a string of swearing and heart emojis that made me laugh once, which surprised me. The following day, the police held a press conference. They confirmed an arrest. They praised interagency cooperation. They warned the public not to speculate. They did not say the suspect's past job title. They did not say clinic. They did not say service corridors. I watched on a small TV in my room and waited for my body to decide whether this was the moment it could relax. It didn't. At noon, Carver called. "We need you to come in again," he said. "For what?" "He asked to speak to you." I laughed once because it was the only reaction I had available. "No. We can refuse. But I want you to understand why I'm asking you." "Why?" "He's made a statement that suggests there may be another location connected to the hotel where evidence is stored. He says he'll only disclose it to you. He's manipulating you." "Yes," Carver said. "And he might be manipulating you into saving someone we haven't found yet." The room tilted. "Someone alive?" "We don't know." My hands went cold. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect the small, fragile part of myself that had started rehearsing the idea of going home. But I also couldn't live with the thought that my refusal might leave someone in a room that no one knew to open. So I said yes. They brought me to an interview room behind a one-way mirror. Carver sat beside me. 2 other detectives watched from the observation side. The suspect was escorted in wearing a jumpsuit and cuffed hands. Without the uniform, he looked less powerful, but not less dangerous. He sat across from me and smiled as if we were meeting again under better circumstances. "You look like you haven't eaten," he said. I didn't respond. Carver kept his voice flat. "You asked to speak to him. Speak." The man tilted his head. "You're not supposed to be here," he said to Carver. "This is private." "It won't be," Carver said. The suspect's smile sharpened. "Okay." He looked back at me. "I want you to understand I never intended to hurt you," he said. I felt my breath hitch. "That's not a comforting statement." "It should be," he replied. "I admired your caution. I thought about asking you to help me." Carver leaned forward. "Help you do what?" The suspect ignored him. "Hotels are places where people pretend to be the best version of themselves," he said. "They put on a costume and think the costume makes them new. I was just honest about what the building makes of us." "Cut the philosophy," Carver said. The suspect sighed theatrically, like a child forced to explain rules to adults. "You want the room?" he said. I went still. "What room?" He smiled at me again. "The room that isn't on your maps." Carver didn't move. "You're going to tell us where it is." "I am," the suspect said. "Because I'm not a monster." I fought the urge to laugh again. "There's a basement corridor that leads to the old clinic annex," he said. "You'll find a door marked electrical that hasn't been used in years. The lock is new. The key is in my apartment." Carver nodded to someone behind the mirror. "We already searched your apartment." "Then you missed it," the suspect said calmly. "I doubt that." The suspect glanced at me. "You should go with them," he said, "if you want to know the truth of what you almost walked past." Carver cut in. "He's not going anywhere." The suspect shrugged. "Then you'll go without your storyteller." The interrogation ended there. Carver escorted me out. "We're not taking you to any search," he said. "I didn't ask to go. I'm telling you anyway." But 2 hours later, he called back. "We found the key," he said. It was hidden inside the plastic base of a desk lamp in his apartment. Good eyes from forensics. "Okay. We're conducting the search now." I waited in my room with the kind of helplessness that feels like nausea. The next call came late afternoon. Carver's voice was different. Flat again, but strained. "We located an additional crime scene," he said. "Was someone alive?" "No." The word dropped like a stone. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry," he added. He knew how to hide the space. If he hadn't insisted on this performance, we might not have found it for months. That's not comfort either. I know. News of the hidden annex leaked within a day. The Harrow court was shut indefinitely. The parent company released a statement about cooperation and safety improvements. People online started calling it the court killer. That name made my skin crawl. It turned a human nightmare into a catchy headline. 2 days later, my involvement was leaked by someone on a gossip forum who had been in the plaza during the arrest. My face appeared in a blurry photo next to a caption about the witness he wanted. Carver called immediately. "We're moving you out of state for a bit," he said. "Is that even possible?" "Yes." "Am I in danger?" "We have him in custody." That's not an answer. He hesitated. "We can't assume he was working alone until we prove it." That was the most frightened I'd heard him sound. A week later, I was back home. I took leave from work. I said I needed rest. I didn't mention that sometimes I would wake up with the inside of my mouth bleeding because I'd been grinding my teeth so hard in my sleep. The city I lived in felt both safer and unreal. I checked locks twice. I stopped taking elevators when the stairs were reasonable. I tried to tell myself I was just shaken. That time would sand down the edges. It did, slowly, but not cleanly. Months passed. The case became a cruel kind of routine. Pre-trial hearings, media requests I refused, copies of my statement requested by lawyers, a victim's family member who emailed me to say thank you, and then apologized for saying thank you to a stranger for something so awful. I kept Martin's number in my phone even though we rarely spoke. He texted once to say he was in therapy. I texted back that I was too. We never talked again after that. When the trial finally came, I testified. The suspect sat at the defense table in a suit that didn't fit him properly. He smiled at me once. I didn't look away. I told the court what I'd seen and heard. I kept my voice steady. I didn't describe the bodies in detail. I didn't have to. The prosecution had photographs I couldn't bring myself to look at. The conviction came quickly after deliberation. multiple counts, life without parole. As the verdict was read, I expected relief. What I felt was something colder, a simple truth. He was not the building. He was just the worst thing that had learned how to move through it. Afterward, outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me whether I thought hotels would ever feel safe again. I said, "I think we should stop pretending safety is a feeling. It's a set of habits." That sounded more composed than I felt. A week later, I got a package. No return address. My name spelled correctly. Inside was a cheap phone charger and a printed photo of the Harrow Court lobby. No people in it. Just the front desk. The lilies. A note on the back. "You told it wrong." I called Carver. He told me to seal the package and wait for an officer. They checked fingerprints. They checked postmarks. They told me it could be a copycat or a follower. They told me to be careful. Half a year after that, the Harrow Court was demolished. The site became a fenced pit for a while. Eventually, a new mixed-use complex went up in its place with glass walls and cheerful banners. I didn't go to watch the demolition, but I did pull up the news photo online. The building looked small in the frame, like it had always been small. I thought about the night I'd stood in that hallway with a stranger who introduced herself, because she didn't want to be alone with uncertainty. I thought about the staff who had learned too late that uniforms can be stolen and used as weapons. I thought about the way the killer had used politeness like a crowbar. For a long time I had focused on him, on his face, on his messages, on the calm way he'd asked whether I was scared of him. But the deeper horror was simpler. He didn't need supernatural darkness. He didn't need a cursed hotel. He only needed what the world already provides in abundance. People trying to be nice. People assuming the system works. People too tired to question a uniform. 2 years later, I traveled for work again. I didn't want to, but I couldn't build a life around avoiding buildings that contained other people. I checked into a bright, mid-level chain hotel in a different city. The lobby smelled like coffee and new paint. The front desk clerk was young and cheerful. He handed me a key card and chirped, "You're on 7. "Closer to the elevators?" I asked. He smiled. "Absolutely." In the elevator, a man stepped in beside me wearing a maintenance jacket. He was just a man. Probably just a man. He smelled like soap. I felt my throat tighten. He nodded politely. "Long day?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. The doors opened onto a bright, ordinary hallway. I walked to my room. I looked for exit signs. I noticed where the cameras were. I checked the lock. I tested the deadbolt. I put my suitcase against the door, not because it would stop anyone who truly wanted to get in, but because it would make noise. Then I sat on the bed and let the quiet settle. I had survived the Harrow Court. I had survived the trial. I had survived the idea that a stranger could decide my life was part of his story. What I hadn't survived, what I don't think anyone ever fully survives, was the knowledge that the world can be rearranged into a trap with nothing more than access, patience, and a smile. When I turned off the lamp, I didn't feel safe, but I felt awake. And sometimes that has to be enough.